Day.
And I'm Richard Day.
We're both chiropractors.
We've been in practice together for 11 years.
Married for 10.
With 3 beautiful little girls.
We know it's possible to have an exceptional practice that's built around your life.
Because we've done it.
So we've created this podcast,
the Lifestyle Practice Builders Podcast.
We'll interview chiropractors, answer questions, and bring you resources to help build and grow your practice.
So let's get this party started.
Welcome back to the Lifestyle Practice Builders Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Haley Day, and today I sat down with Dr. Lauryn Brunclik. She is a hold nothing back kind of woman who finds passion in her life encouraging and guiding other women to live out their entrepreneurial spirit. She's married to her non-chiro husband, Kirby, and they're raising 2 amazing young girls in Northwest Wisconsin. This is Lauryn's 10th year in practice, as she also juggles 2 clinics, a nonprofit, momming, and her successful podcast, She Slays the Day, for female chiropractors, thought leaders, and entrepreneurs. She's obsessed with the Enneagram, claims she's missing the mom gene, has strong faith in spirituality, but swears a little, and likely has undiagnosed ADHD, but she promises to try and stay on topic and not offend anyone. I first met Lauryn when she asked me to be on her podcast to talk about working with my chiropractor spouse. You can listen to that episode on her podcast, She Slays the Day, episode number 37. I appreciate that Lauryn and I have different thoughts on marketing, practice, and life. And if you want to hear how she went from chiropractic school to owning 2 practices, having a podcast, and an online masterclass, then give this episode a listen. Thank you so much, Lauryn, for being on the podcast today.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to dig into your story and find out a little bit more about you. I loved being on your show, and I'm excited to share you with our listeners.
I'm excited too. It's always fun being on someone else's podcast. There's a lot less stress.
Yes. I want people to go to your podcast and listen to your story. And so maybe if you could give us an abbreviated, highlighted version of why you became a chiropractor and that kind of backstory.
Okay. So I decided I was going to be a chiropractor when I was 12. Up until that, I was very much like your A student. I was a pleaser. And so I was going to go into healthcare because I wanted to help people and make money. And so I was going to be a doctor, a real doctor, as my 5-year-old calls it. Oh, I don't know where they get it from, I swear. But anyway, so I was going to go be like an OB or a pediatrician. And I was over at a friend's house after school. And basically she was not poetic or like pushy or very philosophical, honestly, at all. But she kind of started talking about chiropractic and introducing the concept of the Merrick chart to me, which was like mind blowing. And I decided right then, like, well, it just made so much sense. Like the Merrick chart it clicked and it was like, whoa, wow, that makes sense. And so I went home and I told my mom, I'm going to be a chiropractor. And I was 12. And she's like, okay, honey, sounds good. No, you can do whatever. You can be whatever you want. And it didn't waver. I just knew in my heart that is what I was put on this earth to be. And yeah, I feel bad because other people have these like stories where they were like on the brink of being paralyzed and chiropractic saved them. And I'm like, I went to a chiropractor like once or twice a year. I was not a good student. We were not wellness people. But it was just like, yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do. And I just went into it wholeheartedly and super confident, like I do everything else in life.
That's awesome. I think that passion is necessary, for anything you're pursuing in life, and to have it that young and hold on to it is incredible. You didn't waver at all? You never were like, maybe something?
Okay, I did waver a teeny bit. Okay. There was, so I went to Northwestern in Minneapolis and we work on the trimester system. So you're 10 trimesters. Uh-huh. And the second trimester is like notoriously the hardest academically. You are in it. Like literally we sat in the same room, all of us, 8 to 5. Our teachers came into us Monday through Friday. I think it's like 28 credits back when I was there 10 years ago. And you had no life except for on like Friday nights. You were so like just cashed out. You couldn't possibly study. You were going to spend all day Saturday and Sunday studying, but Friday night, our class would go out downtown And so there would just be like 25 to 30 of us just pouring into a bar in downtown. And, we're all like weird chiropractors. We don't know this, but we're weird. So people would be like, are you guys like a sports team? Like, who are you? And we're like, we're chiropractors. And it was the first time in my life that I was presented with people who don't, quote unquote, you can't see me doing major air quotes, believe in chiropractic. And they didn't like it. And they said mean things. And I was just like, like 3 gin and tonics in, being like, I can't believe that you don't. So significance is the big deal to me. Back to why I wanted to please teachers and my parents and become a doctor. And so it was just like, not everybody feels this way about chiropractic that I do. And I didn't realize that aspect of the profession, that I was going to need to be an advocate. I had no idea. And I was like, wait a minute. I am spending all of this time learning anatomy, chemistry, micro, infectious disease. Because like I said, this is during T2 where I am 28 credits of just science. And you're calling me not a real doctor? You're calling me a quack? Are you kidding me? And so I got into not physical fights, but I got into a couple of verbal fights. I never got kicked out of a bar or anything, but it was a moment where I was there was a couple weeks where I was in a slump of why am I working so hard and paying so much money for the world to disrespect me? And then I got over it and I was like, oh, well, it's what I'm here to do. So I'm just going to do it. But yeah, there was a moment.
I would watch my friends get into those types of discussions. But I tried to stay out and just enjoy my gin and tonic.
I've mellowed with age, but I was very young in chiropractic school and very hot-headed and it didn't take much to provoke me.
Good for you taking them on.
Yeah. Yep.
So after graduation, what was your path like?
So after graduation, as I got closer to graduation, I made a huge pivot really quickly without much thought, because again, it was kind of like that wholehearted moment. I was planning on being an associate because that's what you do. You graduate and you associate. Nobody starts their own practice, but then you only associate for a little bit. I don't know if other schools have all this stigma, but nothing against Northwestern, but there was the stigma that if you started right out of school, you were kind of crazy. But if you decided you wanted to be associate forever, you're also lazy. So the thing you did was you became an associate for 1 to 3 years max, and then you start a practice. So I was going to do that. And my husband had graduated from Carlson School of Business at the U of M, a year before I graduated. And he was working for a Fortune 100 company. He's got a marketing and finance degree. And we were going to live in Minneapolis. He had a great job. I was going to find a great associateship, and we were just going to kind of do the hedonic treadmill corporate ladder climb. Uh-huh. And we said one day when we're in our 50s and super rich and have worked a ton, we will retire to where his parents have a farm in Rice Lake, Wisconsin. It's 2 hours northeast. We're 2 hours from Canada where we're at. And we said one day we'll retire to this peaceful scenario. And I was talking to a friend 3 months before graduation, I think. And she said oh, just remind me why you are staying here and you're not moving to Rice Lake right away. And I was like, what? God, that's a good question. Because, and so I called him within 5 minutes, and he was at Target, and he said hey, what would you think about us moving to Rice Lake instead of living here? And, yeah. And he's like, I think that's a really cool idea. I like it. And so we made this huge life decision. And then as divine timing happens, within a week, I get a email of a woman selling her practice in a town about 20 minutes from Rice Lake. Really low overhead. She had gotten into a little bit of IRS stuff. So she wasn't using a practice broker. And she just needed to sell it and get out of town. Mm-hmm. Pretty much literally. She needed to leave town. So it was okay. So we went and looked at it. That was a really funny experience. Again, thank God, I swear this whole thing, like God just had to have his blessing over it because like there's so many different ways that could have gone wrong. We went and we're like, yeah, let's buy it. And so in a matter of like 4 months, we had to like we pivoted our plan. We got married in September. I graduated in October and I bought the practice in December and then we started.
I like that because I think a lot of students feel like they should know a year before graduation. And so much can change. I tell them that you can have an idea of what you're going to do and be working towards it, but be open to other things coming up because you might get an offer, a good associate offer. You might find a practice for sale that works for what you're doing, your situation, or you might decide to move somewhere else. So I think 3 months out from graduation is like a perfect time to be really nailing down some of those key things. And so it's nice to hear that that's when everything changed for you and it worked out.
Well, I mean, I talk about this quite a bit on the show because a lot of the questions that I get from students are very like plan aheady. Mm-hmm. They're like, well, I'm in my second year and I'm living, and like you just hear the stress in their voice of like, what am I going to do? And it makes sense because I would guess that anybody that has the mental capacity to handle chiropractic school has been kind of a planner most of their life, whether they realize it or not, and so we've kind of trained these humans to go like, well, after elementary school comes middle school. After middle school comes high school. After high school comes college. After college is going to come graduate school. And it's in these chunks of like 3 to 5 that we're like able to see down the road. So as you're approaching chiropractic graduation, whether you're in your first year, your second year, or your third, we're trained to know what the next 3 years is going to look like. Like we have spent 20 some years of our life knowing what the next chunk is going to look like for the most part, if you went straight into chiropractic school anyways. Yeah. And so there's this thing that starts to bubble up and stress some people. And they start to realize like, oh gosh, I don't know what 6 months after graduation is really going to look like.
For me, I worked for a couple years after undergrad. And so when I went back to school, there was an option for a 3-year or 4-year. And I did the 4-year because I thought, I've been out there. I've been in the real world and I'm not in any hurry. I can hang out through this. And, that allowed me to work more during school and stuff, which worked out for me. But I think I had more of a like sit back and relax type mentality about it. I wasn't too rushed to know what I was going to do. So, but I think that's true. You are used to, if you go boom, 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 what's next? And if you're in school right now, take a minute, give yourself the freedom to enjoy the journey of school. And, as it gets closer to graduation, then, you start thinking about more of these things. And not that you shouldn't be thinking about it, but that don't get too serious about it until you're getting closer to graduation. So.
Yeah. And it sucks because nobody wants to hear that. Like nobody wants to be told from someone further down the road, like, just enjoy where you're at. They're like, oh, shut up.
Yeah.
But it is like a very hindsight thing of like, I had someone write in that with all of this COVID-19 stuff, they had to make some decisions and it delayed graduation like 6 months for them. And they were and not to like minimize their pain. Like I was that person. Mm-hmm. So like I can empathize of like, oh gosh, honey, I know this hurts so bad right now. It's like if you're talking to your kid in their first like breakup where you're like, oh, how do I know how much you're hurting, but I also know how little this actually matters. And it's such a hard thing to communicate.
Yeah, but take it from us. Just hold on tight. But I think there's too serenity, like what can you do? You can go shadow at practices. I worked in a practice, find out as much about being in practice as you can. And then that will help you, after graduation or make some of those choices as it gets closer. So,
yeah, totally agree.
So another thing that I think students and maybe new grads have a harder time understanding the concept is of having a very clear patient avatar, someone that is the focus of your practice, maybe a main patient that you're going to see or you want to see to gravitate towards you and to build your practice from. So can you tell us a bit about your practice and maybe your avatar or how you focus your marketing and what you do to build your practice along those lines?
Yeah. So we call ourselves a pediatric and prenatal clinic. And I forget, Haley, what town do you practice in?
We're in Kansas City.
And what's the population?
Oh my God, I don't know. It's
tens
big.
Of millions?
It's big. I don't know. I wouldn't even know where to start. I'll look it up. You answer and I'll look it up.
Okay. But you're in the millions. So, okay, I'm actually going to throw you a little bit of a curveball. Don't worry. Like, I completely understand why there is so much emphasis on like, find your ideal avatar, like your ideal intelligent patient. What are they? And we do that in our clinic. Like all of our marketing, all of our voice is written to a mom. Like that is, and that's the biggest nice thing. Like that's the ideal reason that I think everyone, no matter where you practice, the size of your town should have that, because otherwise your marketing can be a little like schizophrenic of like, and it's harder. It's legitimately harder if I write a post, like, so let's say I have to like write a post for a mom's group. And then I have to like write a post for a completely different like group, maybe it's like factory workers and I'm trying to like also bait them. It's hard because my brain has to switch from like talking in one voice to talking into another. So what I will say is like when I started, our practice was in a town of 2,300 people, 2,300 people. And there were 3 other chiropractors already. So in one sense, having that, and one of them claimed to be a pediatric chiropractor. So again, like I said, God's blessing was over this because holy cow, this could have gone a bunch of different ways. But like when you're in kind of rural America, where you're in these towns that are less than 50,000 people, less than 30,000 people, yes, it is important to set yourself apart and be something, but I don't have the luxury. Well, that's a bad way of saying it. I can do whatever the heck I want, but like we see farmers and we talk about low back pain and, we try and talk about it with like low back pain can be a physical manifestation of stress. And we talk, we try and open up the bigger picture, but like there is a lot of stress. We talked about with students of like, okay, now pick the exact group that you want to work with. And I think, like we're a pediatric and prenatal clinic, but we see like 40% peds. And that's a lot, but that means that 60% of my practice is not pediatrics.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be able to pivot too. Like I had somebody write in who said like, okay, so I thought I liked working with kids with sensory issues. And like, that was going to be my ideal avatar. And I like went after it. And I really don't like it. And I feel bad. And I don't know how. And it's like, oh yeah, that totally happens. And I think that it's good to have an idea, but once you start practicing, I think you're going to naturally repel and attract what you put out there. So me just being a working mom who cares about health, like my avatar, like naturally, I'm just going to attract those people into my clinic. Does that make sense? Yeah. I'm like, I don't really care. Now, I didn't set out and go like, I'm not going to see old people. Yeah. We do see like 4% Medicare, but like, so I don't put as much stress on it as maybe I should, or at least in the beginning, I really didn't because I was just trying to make money. Yeah. I got a practice that was seeing 5 to 10 people a week. And so like in the beginning, I was like, yes, I'm a pediatric chiropractor, but yes, I will adjust you and fix your back in 3 visits and call me when you need me. And so like, I think it's a trade-off. I don't know. Where when you're first starting, you can go really, really narrow and be super strict and be like, this is what I see. But there's a trade-off. Like you're going to see a lot less people. So I don't know. I don't know if that big ramble makes sense, but like in a bigger town, like I'm sure Kansas City is,
it's just under 500,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we started our first practice in a small town outside of Boulder, and it was maybe around 18,000, I think, when we started there. And we were one of 2 chiropractors. Now there's probably 5 or 6 in that town. But I understand where you're going. I think when you started, you do want to see everyone. But I think as far as a marketing goes, our strength was in the family chiropractic area. We weren't marketing to athletes, weekend warrior types, because neither of us done ART or that kind of thing. So I can understand in a smaller town too, it's even got to be less because you've got to appeal to more people and you're trying to build your practice. So.
And the bigger town, I will say, when you are in the bigger towns, there's so much white noise. Mm-hmm. And that is the huge incentive to really focus your marketing message on a specific person, is because what's the phrase? Like if you're marketing to everyone, you're marketing to no one. Mm-hmm. Is that the phrase? Did I say it right?
Yeah, I think so.
That's rare for me. So, that is really, really important when you are in those bigger towns. If you're in Dallas, I mean, you could have an ideal market of like, I adjust 2-year-olds. Yeah. And you'd be like, whoa, I'm going to take my 2-year-old to you.
And then you market to 2-year-old art classes and 2-year-old.
Yeah. So it is super important. I'm just a bad person to really be like, oh yes, I had to find my ideal avatar. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been successful.
Yeah.
I almost had to do the opposite of like, yes, I'll adjust your baby, but yes, I'll adjust your husband who has cow poop on his shoes.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on, you have 2 offices, right?
Yep.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit? I get asked this question a lot about what was the right time to add a satellite office and some of the things that played into that, some strengths, some weaknesses, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I would say that in my opinion, the best scenario for opening or considering opening a satellite clinic is opening, or if the satellite clinic would be in the town that you eat and sleep and send your kids to.
Okay.
That is by far the easiest decision. If you're like, should I? And I would open it in the town that I live in the neighborhood I live in. That's kind of an easier, if we're going down that road, then it was like, I kind of exhausted the space I was in and like the people who were willing to drive to this small town. So for me, we had a house in Rice Lake, which is the booming town of 8,900 people. Mm-hmm. And Rice Lake is 18 miles from Cumberland, where my first practice was, a town of 2,300. And now 18 miles in a city, I mean, that's an eternity, right? Like it has so many things. I would guess there are 20 to 25 houses between Cumberland and Rice Lake on this 18 miles. So it's not like I drive through multiple different towns. It is like, nope. And Rice Lake was where we had our house, and our kids were going to go to school there. And that's where the Walmart is. This is another like terminology thing that I resonate with a lot of small town. They'll be like, well, the next town over is the town that has the Walmart. And I'm like, oh, I know exactly what you mean. Say no more. So what that means is like Cumberland, I would have people who would drive 40 minutes to come to their appointment. And we're pretty straight chiropractic. And they run a very tight ship. So like our appointments were 5 to 10 minutes. And, it was kind of like, they didn't have anything else to do in town. There was nothing else to do in town except come to the chiropractor. Whereas in Rice Lake, there's a Walmart and a Menards. And so people didn't have as much of a hard time going like, well, yeah, I have to drive 45 minutes to come to you because you're a unique style of chiropractic. But I can also go get my groceries. I can do this, and they can kind of check off. And so, like it was that easier thing. I just kept hearing people being like, I just don't want to drive to Cumberland, and And I was sick of hearing it. I'm like, okay. So we sat on it for like a year, and we had kind of plateaued. Because from year one, gosh, when did we start that one? Oh, it'd be 5 years next May. So we opened our second clinic 4 years ago. And
in your what, fifth?
This is my 10th year. This is my 10th year. And I opened my second clinic 4 years ago. So I had been in just one location for about 5 years. And I think around year 4 is where we're like, man, we're crushing this. Like we had just grown like a weed, and I got an associate, and I expected that to really and we'll continue to grow with the associate. But we kind of had this year, like up until that, we had like consistently 50 to 25% growth just year after year. And so like year 5, like I said, like I was physically at capacity. So I'm like, I'll get an associate and we'll keep growing. And we grew like 15%. And I was like, well, that's smaller than I thought. And so like, we kind of said like, okay, I think we need just more space. I think we need more options. And so because I had the associate and it was in a town that I lived in, I knew the town. I knew where people congregated. I went to church there. Like, I would continue making community connections without having to do extra marketing is basically what it really comes down to. So it was an easier choice. I was like, all right, let's open there. And then it automatically, because Rice Lake is the big town, sucked 1/3 of our patients from our first clinic.
Okay.
So week 1 in Rice Lake, we saw like 125 people. And so like Cumberland's numbers went down, but like I said, I didn't have to really build Rice Lake. And so then that just kind of steamrolled and went, and it was easier because like I said, people are like, oh, good, you're in Rice Lake now. I'll start coming.
That's awesome. So when we had our practice in Colorado, we were kind of on the verge of opening a satellite, and then we decided to move back to Kansas City. So we ended up running the Colorado practice from Kansas City and opening up one in Kansas City. But I would say it was around year 4, 3 or 4, we thought, okay, what's next? And so those of you who are in your first year or second year and you're waiting for that feeling, you just stick with it and keep pushing and you'll get there. So
Yeah. And it's also just, I don't think we talk enough about how difficult it is though. Like
to start.
A second clinic, like how draining it is. I think we think like, oh man, I did this once. I built a high volume clinic in one spot. So 2 will be twice the money, and 3. And it's like, it might be twice the money, but it is not more. It's more than twice the work. It's kind of like, what's the phrase with kids where it's like one kid is like having 1 kid, but 2 kids is like having 4. That's
and
very
much how
so it's like
82.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so it's like, I'm very happy with 2. We thought over the last 2 years whether we were going to open a 3rd, and kind of decided to pivot and go a different way.
What kind of marketing worked best for you or has worked best for you over the years?
It's tough. Marketing is, I would say, human to human connection. I would say in where I am, and I doubt this is much different in a bigger city, it is having a conversation with somebody after church about their kid. And now some of these conversations were planted and a little more strategic. Like for instance, I remember my daughter, my oldest, who's 8, when she was in kindergarten. So she's Montessori. So she had the same preschool and kindergarten and first grade teacher or something like that. I don't know. We went to her very first parent teacher conference. And I noticed that the teacher was drinking out of a water bottle of a chiropractor from a town 45 minutes away. And I'm just like, interesting. And so, I planted she's going to a chiropractor 45 minutes away. Hello. I'm going to be an easy poach situation. And so I planted those conversations slowly. I hear rumors that so-and-so is not here today because her kid has another ear infection. Another ear infection. So then after church, I just make sure, oh, hey, I heard so I would say those, and it's not as sexy as like a Facebook ad that got 3,000 views and 100 clicks and this and that, but it works better. It really works better. And it's like, you know, they're easier to convert. They stay around longer. So we still do all the stuff. But nothing comes down to, and I've gotten ballsier. Like, I've calmed down. I don't pick fights anymore, but just with my straight up, like, I will see someone and I will, like, if we have like an ongoing relationship, and I'll say like, are you still dealing with headaches? Like, just completely non sequitur. And they'll be like, yes. And I'll be like, what is wrong with you? Yeah. Why are you not calling and getting in? And they'll be like, I know I need to. And I'm like, seriously, please do. And then like, if I have that conversation, you know, like a week later, I might send them a message on Facebook and say like, I don't see you on the schedule yet. Smiley face emoji, you know, like, and it's because I think I got to a place for me financially where I know I care more about that person than their pocketbook. Mm-hmm. I didn't start out that way. Like, let's just be honest. Like when I first started out, like I was like, I need to make money. So it felt awkward to be borderline confrontational because it felt greedy and weird and icky. Uh-huh. Now I know that I care like so much that I'm willing to be embarrassed if you say like, I don't want to go to you. And I'll be like, okay, well, will you go to any chiropractor? Like, and if they're like, you know, I'm willing to have that conversation and look dumb or this because I'm like, okay, I mean, worst case scenario, they're going to say no. Or I can like come across from a very authentic place and be like, I don't care if you come to me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get you some chiropractic. And that has, you know, but that takes so much experience and comfort in yourself and the profession and your pocketbook, your bank.
I agree. You know, I think with being in a new place for us, I mean, we've been here 5 years now, but we're in a different place than we were when we first started our first practice. And it's much more comfortable to just be me and invite people in and, you know, this is what we do and this is how we can help and let them decide, but certainly more out there with everyone that see on a daily basis. So
yeah, it's like direct sales.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I am not above direct sales anymore because like I have seen the conversion of just like being willing to be like, hey, I saw you posted on Facebook to the world that you might have to get tubes if he gets one more ear infection. Would you be willing to let me do a scan and see what his neurology is doing? Like, you know, we use an insight scanner in the clinic. So that's kind of a nicer, softer way than like for people, because I don't just go up to everyone and bitch slap them and be like, girl, get in the clinic. I swear, they're special relationships. But, you know, a patient who I'm not overly, like I might scare them away with my confrontation. I just go like, I'm really fascinated what their neurology is doing. Would you be open to having a scan sometime? And I just enter from a place of curiosity because I'm super curious. Like, whoa, can I help that?
Yeah. I think that's a good point. I should do it more. You know, one of our daughters had kind of chronic ear infections until we decided, hey, what are we doing about this? You know, and we took more control of it than we had been. And she never had another one after that. And so we were just a lot more proactive. And yet I sit on that because I don't want to push people away. So I think good for you putting it out there.
Yep, just putting it out there.
What kind of advice do you have for new doc?
I would say chill out about trying to figure it all out. You just got to take a breath and work. Like so much of us spend so much time being anxious of like, am I doing the right thing? Is it the right location? Is it the right name? Is it the right logo? And I believe that whether it's God or universal energy or innate or whatever you want to call it, I believe that we have more than one, like we don't get off course. But we have plenty of time to get like redirected back on if it's kind of like, oh, that was an interesting little detour you took, but you learned something from it. And so it's like, we put so much effort in like, is this the right thing I'm doing? And the reality is like, there isn't a playbook. Like, I don't believe that there's this playbook where it's like, oh, let's see if Jenny's going to move to the right town after graduation. She didn't. Her life is going to be shit. Like she's screwed. She made the wrong decision. Like, I think that our purpose is not dependent on so many of the things that we're anxious about. I believe, oh, sorry.
No, you're good. I think this idea of perfection, I see it, I hear it all the time. And it is, you have to fail. You have to go for it. You'll recover. I promise. Just keep going after what feels right.
Yeah. I mean, I say that like in my heart, I knew I was put here to be a chiropractor, but you know what? I'd be a damn good car salesman. I would be great as a pediatrician. Like, do I think that I would be able to have a profound effect and purpose being a pediatrician? Heck yeah. I'd be like the coolest, most like I like moved to the States where the only thing they have left is medical exemption. I'd be like, yeah, come to me. I'll hook you up. I'll sign your medical exemption form. Like, so it's like, like I said, yeah, there's just so much concern around like, is this the right step? And it's like, our purpose is a lot bigger. It's a lot broader, and you can fulfill that whether you're an associate or a chiropractor. You can fulfill that whether you become a chiropractor and then 5 years later you do something different. You decide to associate or you move a town. Like none of those are just the details that aren't really important.
Well, and I think we're all a lot more resourceful than we give ourselves credit for. So
absolutely. You could say that again. Like people just don't give themselves enough credit where it's like, look where you are.
Yeah, we're fighters. We're So I agree. I think that's great advice. What about the experienced doc? What do you have for them? What's working for you that maybe someone's feels lost or they've plateaued, or this quarantine and COVID is making them feel like they're kind of lost?
Yeah. I have a lot to say to them. That's actually what the whole purpose of this masterclass, I don't know when this is going to air, but like, I have a lot to say to them. That's why I started that masterclass Revive, because I think that growth always has to be forced. We are just beings that like to be comfortable. So whether you are building muscle, that has to be forced. You have to literally break down tissue and repair it to build muscle. Like when you look at some of these changes that have happened throughout history, these huge major things, civil rights, it's like that had to be forced. And on a smaller level than like civil rights, when it comes to looking at this quarantine and COVID, like there is an opportunity here. If you want, so this is really only speaking to the people who are like, I don't know. I just feel meh. Am I bored? Am I this? Like if you're just rocking your life right now and you're finding pure joy, this really isn't for you. It's for the people who are like, I guess I'll do this. I don't know. Is this the right thing? And they don't necessarily feel unfulfilled, but they just aren't sure that they want to keep going or that they're on the right path. This is the opportunity to really look at where you've been and what got you here, what patterns, what mindset, what about your identity did you have that got you here? What was your version of success? Because you got here based on a fake house of success that you built in your mind. And it was probably built on like other rich people you saw and other successful chiropractors you saw and like maybe what your mom did. And like, so we all build this house of what a perfect little successful American/Canadian/ first world life looks like. And then we're surprised when we're sitting in our house that we built, not based on our own true identity and our own true dreams. And we're like, why don't I like this house? I mean, it's perfectly great. I should be perfectly happy and content with this house. Yet you're not. And so when we look at this major thing that we've all been through in the beginning of 2020, it is like you have an opportunity to move. You have an opportunity, literally or metaphorically, to burn down that house and rebuild it the way you want. And look at like, what does your 30-year-old self, 40-year-old self, 50-year-old self want going forward? You don't have to keep living in that house. What a long answer. I told you I had a lot to say on it. Sorry.
No, I like it. I think people need to be inspired. They need to be moved and they need resources. So tell us about the resources that you offer or you have.
Yeah. So I decided to, I really felt like I had a lot to say and help. And I wanted to help people kind of transform through this. I wanted to transform with them. I'm also an Enneagram 3. So during crisis, I need activities to keep me busy. Otherwise, I go crazy. So I decided to start because people ask, like, will you do coaching? And I'm like, I can't do coaching. I just don't have the empathy for it. Like, I can't do long-term stuff, but I can do short, intense bursts of like, I am all in your life, fixing some stuff, shaking stuff up, and like helping you get unstuck. I can do that. So I started an 8-week masterclass. It's called Revive. It's the very first masterclass I've done. We'll tell you, like, it kind of takes me back to like my beginning days of chiropractic where I was like selling and feeling really awkward, being like, an adjustment is $45. Please pay me. Like, it's just this weird, like, okay, I have something to offer, and especially coming from podcast land where you just like give everything away. You're like, damn it, I don't want to make people pay. But this is taking a lot of time. So my husband said I had to. So anyway, so it's an 8-week intense training and Q&A. So it's live. And there's a workbook and we're working through kind of the first step is really clarifying how you got to this point, kind of like I was saying. And then the second phase is making corrections, reestablishing goals, whether it is for this year or your next 5 years, that fit with your true identity and purpose. And then the last part is creating a game plan with boundaries and like an execution plan that won't allow kind of that old identity to creep back in and get you off course.
And you didn't mention the podcast. Talk about the podcast.
Oh, the podcast. So She Slays the Day it's about a year old now. It started, I think the very first episode was like June 1st. And it was probably during another crisis in my life where the Enneagram 3 in me was like, I have to do and create something. So it is a podcast for chiropractic females, kind of. That's what I tell people it is, but I think that's probably because I'm a chiropractic female. So like, it is more of like a lifestyle podcast for chiropractic females. I have a lot of entrepreneurs and thought leaders that listen to it, most of them female, that are like, well, I'm not a chiropractor, I'm a lawyer, but like, we just talk more about lifestyle stuff, than maybe the specifics of chiropractic. Like I had a chiropractor on last week and we talked about TikTok and whether I'm too damn old to start TikTok and like, how do I do this? And why would a chiropractor do TikTok? And so we just talked about that. I've talked about my journey with my body dysmorphia. We've talked about social media. We talk about like husbands and wives who like are like working together and having issues, so like, it's just kind of, it's my podcast. I'm going to talk about what I want.
Yeah. I've listened to several episodes and I agree. It is a lot chiropractic, but I could see others getting into it and getting into you and loving what you're sharing that's outside of that, or just feeling like a friend, I would say.
Yeah. So. It's real. It's real. It's raw. And it's me. I'm not afraid to get on there. The last thing I want to do is get on there and give any kind of idea that I have it figured out or that I'm perfect.
I like that. I follow you on Instagram too, and I enjoy your post. What's funny is that when you interviewed me, you made a big deal about the Enneagram, and I had not taken the test, so I did. And I'm a 3.
Are you? It doesn't surprise me.
And I've been telling my husband, I'm like, we're so much alike, but we're so different. So it's funny that we're the same Enneagram.
Well, are you okay? How many tests have you taken?
To be honest, I've only taken like one. I want to say it was a longer one, but I do want to take the real test. It wasn't
okay.
a real test.
Well, you don't necessarily need the real test, but usually what I tell people is you should take 3 or 4.
Okay.
And when you get like, if all of your results come back a 3, then, and you read the description of 3, but like when you read your description of the Enneagram, it should like cut to your soul. Like, oh God, I didn't know anybody knew that about me. Like, you should read it. And if I tell people, like, if they read it and they're like, that's me. And like, nope, we're not there yet. And so there's so many, because each of us has all different 9 types in us. You could be a 2 wing 3. So you're more of a helper type, but you have that like achiever thing in you. You could be a 9 that is a peacemaker that goes to 3 when they're really healthy. So like during times of like things are good in their life, they're very achievement oriented, but their main motivation. So like it gets complicated.
I think I was a 1 wing.
Okay. So you could only be a 1 wing 2 or 9.
Okay.
But
that wasn't it.
You could be a 9 wing. So we're getting like in the weeds, but like I loved it.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead and take a couple more tests and let me know what they come back as your results. We'll figure it out for you.
I will. Tell me about a book, your favorite book, and then we'll wrap it up.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm currently obsessed with Untamed by Glennon Doyle.
Okay.
Now, I don't know. I mean, the rest of the world is pretty obsessed with it too. It's not a self-help book. It's a feminist memoir is what she calls it. And like, I bleed feminism. And she has a similar Enneagram type. So like when she writes, but her writing is just these short little chapters, these stories about how women have been tamed to fit into a box and act a certain way. And like just the parenting, it is so good. It's the best book it's the best nonfiction book I've ever read.
Okay. What about more of a business type book? For that.
Let's see. I don't know. You're putting me on the spot.
I saw your picture and I'm trying to think because Traction was, I remember from your
Traction's good. Here's the deal. Like I read those books and I like them. Like even like Brendan Burchard, Michael Hyatt, like how do you not get something out of them? But they don't feed my soul the way, like, it's just very masculine. Like, this is how a successful person does this thing. And I've figured out the best thing in the world. And it's like, so like, I struggle to read them fully. I like getting some of the concepts and being like, yeah. Like I like Michael Hyatt's way that he organizes, when he's talking free to focus. Let's say that. I will say that is the most business-minded one that I've liked lately is Free to Focus by Michael Hyatt. It's pretty black and white. It's very like those business books can put a lot of stress on people because it's like, okay, this is now how I delegate and run my life. And there's alarms and there's this. And it's like, oh, do we really need that stress right now? But I like that one.
Well, they're trying to free you up so you aren't stressed, or they're trying to make you put it in they just don't seem to be written in this language of gray area and compassion. And it's not that they're written in uncompassionate, without compassion. They're multimillionaire men who get what they want. So they write with like a force and like this is the way it needs to be. And I'm like, yes, but no.
So
what kind of daily rituals do you have? Do you have any? What do you like to do? Do you use a planner?
I do. So I live by my paper planner, which has actually gotten me into a lot of trouble before because I'll like put something on my phone, but not on my paper planner or vice versa. And I'm like, oh, well, my paper planner says I'm getting a massage, but my phone says I'm doing a podcast interview. Like, oops. So I am a fan. I've read, like I said, I've listened to Rachel Hollis's way that she sets up things and Michael Hyatt. And like, there's all these like different, the passion planner and these ways to set up your week. And I like them, but I always fail at them because have you read Kate Northrup's Do Less?
I haven't.
Okay. So it's all about the woman and how her hormones, not her cycle, like her menstrual cycle, but yes, like her energy cycle goes more with the moon and her menstrual cycle. And so like during certain weeks, a man's is 24 hours. So, I'm going to come off like super feminist anti-male in this. I'm not trying to, I promise.
You're fine. I like men. All you men out there, listen, because
I'm sorry. I like
you might need this information.
Yeah. So the reason that a lot of stuff doesn't resonate with me is because with that a man writes is because they're built in a 24-hour system. So for them, they can go every day at 5 a.m. I do this, and then I do that, and then I do this, and then I send this. And it's like, oh, okay, wow, that sounds... And anytime I've tried to put that in my life, it's super rigid, and I ended up failing. And in Kate Northrup's book, Do Less, she talks about how, there are certain weeks of your menstrual cycle where you should be planning on being more productive and should be gentler on yourself because of what your hormones are doing and all of this. And I've kind of taken that, and every Sunday I sit down with my planner and I start with like the non-negotiable things that are being done. I've committed to being interviewed on a podcast. I have to take my daughter to a doctor's appointment. That was a really weird example to use. Our kids go literally to the doctor once a year to get that form for school signed. The dentist, we'll say the dentist. I have an acupuncture. And so I put all my appointments in, and then I put in the next layer, but I don't wake up at 5 a.m. every week. There are some weeks where I might have to wake up at 5 a.m. to get a workout in because of of what's looking like. But there are some weeks I need sleep, and I don't start my day until 8 or 9. And that's okay. And then there are some weeks where it's like, I'm feeling super energetic and I'm not going to have other times to work out because I have this. So like, I'm going to wake up at this time and I'm going to do these things. So it kind of comes back to like my personality needs a flexible rigidness. Like I like having
a macro approach where you don't have to do it every day, but as long as it gets done 3 times a week.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Like workouts, being active has to happen in my schedule, but I don't go like I work out every morning at 5 a.m. because if I don't do it, then it won't happen. It's like, well, sometimes I work out 6 days a week and it's at different times. And so I just need a little more flexibility in there.
I feel you on that. I'm a lot the same of that. So I like for workouts, I just work out when I can. So sometimes it's 5 times this week and then maybe once the next week, but I just go when I can. And so I'm not worried about it when I don't go, and I'm not beating myself up about it or, worried
and sometimes I need sleep. Like especially during this COVID quarantine situation, like I can't wake up at 5 a.m. or 5:30 is technically when my alarms would go off normally. I can't do that every day. My body is processing stress differently. So I find myself sleeping until 6:30, and it's like, am I getting less done in the morning? Yeah, for sure. But like you have to balance like part of the routine. Sometimes some of the self-care is like, well, I didn't have time to read my Bible this morning or journal or meditate, which sucks, but I did sleep and that does do something for me.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you so much for being on, and I know you got to get going. So tell us the best way to connect with you.
I would say the best way is going to be through social media, through DMs on either Facebook or Instagram. It's just at She Slays Podcast. And yeah, like I get a lot of DMs, but I think I respond to like 99% of them.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate your time and I love hanging out with you. Love listening to your podcast, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Haley.
If you enjoyed this podcast episode, please share it with your friends on Instagram and Facebook. And for those of you who are already subscribers, we really appreciate it. Thanks for the reviews. We love reading those and knowing that you're loving the podcast. If you're looking for more tips and inspiration, be sure to check us out at lifestylepracticebuilders.com or join our business and marketing Facebook group for chiropractors at facebook.com/group/lifestylepractice.